The winter of the 43rd was waning. The Red Army, developing the success achieved in the Battle of Stalingrad, undertook offensive operations on other fronts as well. The enemy was thrown far to the west. Stalingrad became a symbol of the indestructible power of the Soviet people. The victory at the Volga stronghold was a triumph of the Soviet military art. A huge role played here artillery as the main strike force of the Red Army, tank and mechanized units, and, of course, aviation. But the enemy is still strong. The party and the government are taking effective measures to prepare reserves, to equip all branches of the troops with the latest combat equipment, more advanced weapons. New types of airplanes are arriving at the armament of aviation. Over the battlefields more and more often appear, and our favourites attack aircraft too. They are becoming more and more. Formidable flying tanks deliver crushing blows to enemy communications, airfields, strongholds. In our rear aviation plants work under the slogan "Everything for the front," this means that more and more new batches of combat vehicles are coming off the assembly line. We need personnel. We need pilots. The joyful news from the front made my soul feel warmer. There was an irresistible impulse hurry to the front. It seemed to me and my fellow cadets of the Voroshilovgrad flying school that we were kept too long in the rear, too slowly taught to fight. The war would be over without our participation. But now we have left behind endlessly long months of hard study, training flights, past credits and exams. Instead of cadet buttonholes, we now have a commander's. On the blue background, clearly distinguished Cherry Cube Junior Lieutenant. The same rank was given to my comrades in the squadron Kalatin, Igor Ishev, Davidov, Semeko. Everyone is in a festive and high mood. Today, graduation, we will be awarded diplomas. And then to the front. Uralsk. On the snow-covered formation ground, the school staff is lined up. The wind is ruffling the silk cloth of the unfurled banner. General Kravtsov, the head of the school, is giving us a fatherly welcome. Accept, dear fatherland, combat replenishment. And then. A huge TB-3 was frozen, spreading its planes wide. Its wings and corrugated fuselage were covered with fine scales of frost. The engines hummed bassily, and above them a cloud of snow dust rose and recoiled into the distance. What a frost, says Igor Kalatin. The calendar says March, it's time for spring. And here, as we have in the Moscow region in January. Igor's whitish eyebrows look grey, his blue eyes shine. Sturdy, stocky, he walks a little staggered. Always cheerful, today Igor jokes a lot. You bet. Yesterday's cadets, and now commanders of pilots, we go towards our future. We guess this TB-3 will take us to the tantalizing front line, where the war is going on. Snow squeaks under new boots, white with blue tint. The air is blue. The smoke above the chimneys does not ripple, rises straight up. We go 2 by 2. I remember how my heart beat yesterday when Senior Lieutenant Smilsky ordered Igor Kalatin to get out of the line, and he didn't even look at me. Then he counted the selected guys, and our eyes met. Apparently Smilsky read in my eyes everything that I wanted to say at that moment. After me, he selected 2 more and concluded, "That's it. I can't take anyone else for now." Igor's happy mood was transmitted to all of us. No wonder. After all, for the last time in our lives there have been so many events we were made officers, received new, with a needle, uniform, appointed to a combat regiment and headed for the front. Let's go, step into our tomorrow. How will our fates turn out? What will happen in a year? No, in a month, 2 months? And here I am already sitting between the 2 ribs of the left wing of TB-3. The engines roared deafeningly. It's useless to say anything to each other. I can't look down either. And from this it seems that the time stretches infinitely long. But finally we feel that the car begins to descend. The airplane sort of hangs, makes 1 circle the second. A jolt. A run. The car turns around and rolls into the parking lot. For the last time the engines roared with a loud sigh and immediately fell silent. But there's still a rumble in my ears. "Get out, brothers, we've arrived," carries someone's voice from the passenger seats of the right wing. We are at the front airfield. The March sun is shining in spring, blinding our eyes. One by one we jump down to the ground. There are thawed ground all around. In some places the first tufts of grass are green. Look at this, Igor, it's great. It's already spring here. It even smells like spring, he replies cheerfully. And smiling too, he puts his face to the sun. Fate brought me and Igor together while I was still in flying school. We finished our studies. I would like to fight together. We're standing by a quiet TB3, waiting. The head of the group has hurried off with all the papers. Nobody's calling us anywhere yet. We can look around. I wonder what it is, a field airfield in the front line. Even in the walls of the school we connected our future with it. And here it is finally in front of my eyes, somewhere very close to the front line. Around here and there, Camaraderie airplanes are hidden behind earthen ramparts. In the parking lots, technicians, mechanics, motorists armed. The engines hum, subside and roar again at the full power of their steel lungs. This is a comprehensive, thorough preparation of IL for the next flights to combat missions. Bombs are being brought to the airplanes. I see how to hang under the wings of rockets, thanks to which Ilyushin became known as the brother of the famous Katyusha. And the attack aircraft also has cannons and machine guns. I like this machine. I can't wait to get in the cockpit and take off. I'm facing northwest. That's the front. Behind it is my native Izium. Now, probably the drops are ringing there too, the buds are swelling on the trees. And my mother watches the sun bathing in puddles. Father, tinkling a shovel, takes the meltwater out of the yard. And he thinks about the fact that his son, that is me, Anatoly, loved to do this work. And maybe our yard is empty, maybe the fascists wiped out the house and the trees, and only ashes remained. Mother, father, how are you? What's wrong with you? It's disturbing and painful to ask myself questions that I can't get an answer to for a long time. But it's up to me to speed things up. And not only me, but also my fellow pilots. I just need to get behind the wheel as soon as possible. And into battle. It is necessary to beat the fascists as they beat their guys, who recently expelled the enemy from this territory. Having looked around, I notice a lot of silent witnesses confirming my guesses. Here in the distance is a dark pile, in which piled everything that remained of the enemy equipment after its processing. By our aviation skeletons of airplanes and cars, gun barrels, all sorts of diameters of wheels with burnt rubber. Everywhere you look, traces of war. So, not so long ago there were occupants here. Hurry up. I exhaled. Hurry up and fight. Smiling good-naturedly and squinting his eyes from the spring sun, a military man, a pilot by the look of him, came rushing to us. He said hello and immediately asked, "What school are you guys from?" "From Stalingrad," I answered. So, fellow countrymen, we had a lot of Voroshilov graders in the 505th Stalingrad regiment. Why, there were. I looked warily at the pilot. Well, before Stalingrad there were. The smile disappeared from his face, and then there were only 3 of us left in the squadron. In short, let's get acquainted, Lieutenant Tarakhanov. You can just call yourself Nikolai. Igor and I called ourselves too, shook his hand. I dug my eyes into the orders that peeped out from under the unbuttoned jacket of the pilot. Wow. Red banner, Zvezdoka. I will not hide I envied. Not so much the awards, as the lieutenant's combat biography. Apparently he had distinguished himself many times at Stalingrad. At these moments Tarakhanov seemed to me a special, extraordinary man. And who are we in comparison with him? I asked myself. Just untrained fledglings, that's all. So far we only in the imagination imagined the first combat flight. And still very well understood that at the front need pilots, and not just controlling the aircraft people and air fighters, tactically literate, skillful, able not only to fight with an experienced, insidious enemy, and certainly win it. With the naive curiosity of schoolchildren, we began to ask Tarakhanov how many flights on his account, for what he was awarded government awards, how soon, in his opinion, we will be entrusted with combat vehicles. Lieutenant extremely briefly satisfied our curiosity, then smiled, patted me on the shoulder, and said, "I'm in a hurry, guys. Have a good day. And we'll meet you there." And he raised his hand up, which meant we'll meet in the hot Frontline sky. Suddenly a slender girl in a military uniform appeared on the path. On the epaulettes, one patch each. A sergeant. I was surprised by the new uniform with epaulettes and insignia on them. At school we were given old uniforms, and we had never seen new ones. Meanwhile, the girls stopped and greeted us. I was ordered to summon Junior Lieutenants Kalitin and Ned Balo. "I suppose that's you?" "Yes, sir." We, as if in front of the commander, at once stretched in a string and clicked our heels. "What have we done in front of you?" Igor's eyes shone in a grin. "I'm sorry, I don't know how to call you." The girl was not confused. "It's not relevant to the case. And if you're very curious, I'll tell you your name is Katya. You are summoned to the command center. Immediately." She clearly turned around and hurried back. "She's cute." "Really?" Igor looked at me, waiting for confirmation. "Yes," I answered machine, as I did not have time to look at her. I remembered only her golden curly hair, which came out from under her dark blue beret, and her very expressive grey-blue eyes. The regiment commander was waiting for us at the command post. We reported to him that we had arrived for further service. "Sit down," Major Lykovsky suggested, leafing through someone's personal file. "Wasn't it mine?" No, he asked Igor one question or another. He answered leisurely. "And tell me, please, how does a fly land on the ceiling? With a half loop or with a flip over the wing?" Suddenly asks Lykovsky. The question is so unexpected that the usually resourceful Igor is even confused. He is silent for a few seconds. Then blushing he answers. "I, Comrade Major, on the attack aircraft learned to fly. I didn't do flies." The commander smiled. "It's very good that you learned to fly on attack aircraft. But whether you know how to fly, we'll see. I'll check. I'll definitely check. Especially handwriting. And observation too. You think I asked you about the fly for no reason." Igor apologized for his impetuosity. "It happens, young man, it happens." The commander smiled, making it clear that the incident was over, but the inspection was going to be serious. From the commander we left in high spirits, both enrolled in the same squadron, the 3rd. Our commander is Captain Krivoshlek. Leaving the command center, I, in one of its compartments at the dispatcher's desk, saw already familiar to me golden curls. The girl officer was talking on the phone. She noticed us and smiled with her eyes. The acquaintance with the commander was short. "You will be in Lieutenant Bikbilatov's unit," said Captain Krivoshlek, and made some note in his notebook. "I am getting acquainted with Bikbilatov. You can sometimes judge a man's character by his appearance. It is not necessary to be a great psychologist to understand Lieutenant Bikbilatov is strong-willed and demanding. Expressive brown eyes look straight ahead, point blank. Slim, trim, energetic. One can immediately guess a strong nature. I have always respected such people, and that is why I sympathized with Bikbilatov. Later I realized that I was not mistaken. Bikbilatov was a brave fighter, a good comrade and a real commander. He excelled in piloting techniques, had a quick reaction, made decisions that sometimes seemed desperate, but always brought him combat success. This showed his ability to think, soberly assess the situation, really weigh their chances. The next day all the newcomers were gathered in the most spacious room and familiarized with the program of combat and political training. For more than 20 days we had to master the methods of aircraft navigation, piloting techniques, to make shooting and bombing, to work out group flying in a link, 6-8, to study the battle area and enemy tactics, to remember the silhouettes of enemy aircraft and other equipment. In short, the load was plenty. Especially for me, given that within the walls of the military school I was given only 2 independent flights around the circle. The first part of our program was full of classes. With special persistence and diligence we mastered the theory, deepened our political knowledge. Much was given to us by conversations, lectures and politinformations conducted by political officers. They told us how, during the Battle of Stalingrad, our regiment provided the offensive of ground units, about the oath of 2,000 Komsomol volunteers not a step back. Let's defend Stalingrad. And now I remember how the party organisation raised the question before the personnel of the division about collecting funds for the construction of a link of Il-2 planes. All soldiers warmly responded to this call. In 2 hours they collected 82,000 rubles, and in total 104,000 rubles were collected by this call. In these hot days, Komsomol members joined the Communist Party. I remember how nervous Bikbulatov was when joining the Communists. In his application he wrote ... Please accept me into the ranks of the All-Union Communist Party, as I want to fight against fascist enslavers as a communist. Once Major Gonter, the deputy commander, came to us and told us about the participation of our regiment in the Battle of Stalingrad. Holding our breath, we listened to the heroic deeds of our senior comrades. The commander of the 2nd Squadron, Senior Lieutenant Suklishkin, learned from the regiment command that transport planes were landing at the Pitomnik airfield, delivering ammunition, equipment and food for the surrounded Hitlerite troops. All approaches to the airfield were strongly protected and covered by a dense barrier of anti-aircraft fire. Having thoroughly studied the air defense system, the commander managed to break through the wall of barrage fire with his group. Attack aircraft went to the target and in a few minutes destroyed 13 enemy aircraft. On the same day, the group led by Suklishkin once again visited the airfield. This time the fascists met the daredevils not only with anti-aircraft firefighters were barreling in the air, which were not slow to pounce on the plane of the leader. But Suklishkin fulfilled the task this time too. True, his IL was shot down, and the brave pilot was wounded. However, he managed to transfer the machine across the front line and land on his territory. We also learned about how Lieutenant Tarakhanov, already familiar to us, distinguished himself. He was given the task of photographing the object. It means to go in a straight line without changing course, altitude and speed. All the fire of enemy anti-aircraft guns he called on himself. Just out of the zone of fire, as Messrs. Ill-caught fire. Tarakhanov was wounded in the face by fragments of the exploded shell, but continued to fulfill the combat task. Sliding knocked down the flame and took a course home. The aviators at the airfield marvelled at how Tarakhanov managed to get home on the plane, which had about 200 holes, the centre plane was damaged, the landing gear and pneumatic struts were punctured. The machine could barely hear the rudders, and when landing, part of the tail plumage fell off. In this unequal fight, Tarakhanov's courage and his high-flying skill played their role. Junior Lieutenant Zaplavsky said the Commissar had to perform a combat mission in very difficult meteorological conditions. Enemy anti-aircraft guns opened a barrage of fire on the Sound, and one of the shells hit the plane. Zaplavsky on the damaged machine completed the task, but on the way back he was pursued by a Messer. The brave pilot managed to evade the enemy, pull across the front line and safely land the hit car. Then he reported his whereabouts to the regiment, asked to send specialists from the field aircraft repair shop, together with them restored the aircraft and flew to his airfield. We listened attentively to the deputy, and the episodes from the combat life of our senior comrades in arms who participated in the Battle of Stalingrad caused admiration. Their courage and bravery were perceived by us as an example to follow, as a model of selfless loyalty to their sacred duty as soldiers of the Soviet fatherland. You have come to the regiment, on the battle flag of which is the image of the great Lenin. The major excitedly finished his speech. Be worthy of the high honour, multiply the glory of our regiment. We had to answer in practice. What response in our hearts, in our minds received his words? And meanwhile, while we looked with admiration at each pilot, whose chest was decorated with the gold star of the hero of the Soviet Union, they seemed to us knights of the sky, people whose bravery, courage and combat daring were beyond our reach. My idol was the best ace of the regiment, the first to receive here the title of Hero of the Soviet Union, Captain Dmitry Prudnikov. I looked closely at him, greedily caught his every word, tried to imitate not only the courage and bravery of the hero, but also the manner of speaking, holding myself, even copied his gait. It seemed to me that this was the only way to be equal to heroes, the only way to become like them. Secretly, I cherished a dream to get under Prudnikov's command in his advanced squadron. There was a temporary lull on our section of the front. Using it, all personnel are intensively preparing for the upcoming combat operations. Everyone clearly understands that coming hot battles, that the enemy is still strong and will persistently resist. Former pilots are unaccustomed without real combat work. And here we have to study theory, trainings, listen to lectures. For us young pilots, these days are a real school. Right in the field, on the front airfield, experienced mentors, masters of assault attacks teach us to beat the enemy, teach us to win in battle. Their recommendations have been tested 3 times by practice. Their conclusions are verified by hundreds of attacks. And we know what the regiment commander, Major Lykovsky, Navigator Suklishkin, pilots Bikbilatov, Zaplavsky, Beda says is beyond any doubt. This is a guide to action. Assault strikes. For pilots, these 2 words have a deep meaning. It's a whole science that requires courage, a sure eye and a steady hand. It requires thorough knowledge of the enemy's habits, tactics, his combat capabilities. You need physical endurance, stamina, will, the ability to navigate well, read the land, unmistakably find the right target and strike it accurately and irresistibly. And one more thing this science requires: to be able to find a way out of seemingly hopeless situations. This was taught to us now by experienced pilots, masters of all destroying blows. One day was followed by another. Having studied the theory, we started the practical part of the program, the desired flights. Yes, it is provided. At 6:00, the beginning of flights. The regiment commander comes to the starting radio station, takes a microphone from the hands of a soldier communicator. It's my turn. I put on a parachute, jump on the left wing of the sludge, climb into the cockpit, fasten the straps, close the lantern and freeze, waiting for permission to taxi. Caution 03. I'm Rubin. Permission to take off. The engine is revving up. The car is rushing forward. I release the brakes, and the airplane, having taken acceleration, rushes across a flat field, pushes off the ground and rises. Having gained altitude, I perform the first turn, the second. I put the car in a deep turn. Sludge obediently obeys my will, clearly outlining the figures. There should be a combat turn, pike. Again, I put the car in a deep turn with a gain of altitude. Caution 03. Warns Rubin. Watch the air carefully. A few minutes later, a new command. Finish the job. Land. The commander analyzes my flight in detail, passing it piece by piece. Even minor errors in piloting technique did not pass his attention. I thought how far I am from real confidence in piloting. I concluded I have to work hard, persistently, every day. At the same time, from the same start, the old men, experienced pilots, whom we young men called Stalingraders, were taking off. I sat aside and closely watched their actions. How they confidently own the airplane. I wish I could do that, but soon. Several days passed. During this time we learned to identify individual pilots by their style, studied the handwriting of our best masters. Prudnikov. Someone exclaimed enthusiastically when an attack aircraft swiftly passed over us. Streltsov went shaving. Look at that, Lyakhovsky dive. One day Igor Kalitin and I were standing aside from the refueling line of the launch, watching the flights. Good afternoon, guys. I heard a voice nearby. We turned around Tarakanov, smiling, as he did then, during our first meeting. Hello, comrade lieutenant. We greeted Nikolai Nikolaevich according to our school training. He was, as it seemed to us, a little tipsy. At that moment, with an unimaginable roar, an Ilyushin piloted by Prudnikov flew over the start. That's great. That's the spirit. Igor, look. Involuntarily burst out of my chest in admiration. Tarakanov's eyes twinkled. Do you see the single? Tarakhanov showed his hand in the direction of the aircraft refueling lot at the start. "We see." We answered. "The number on it is 12th. "That's right. I'm going to fly it now." Nikolai extinguished his smile, pressed his lips and walked quickly towards the single. "What is it with him?" perplexed Igor. But I was now fully occupied with the airplane, controlled by Prudnikov. 10 minutes passed. We all stood in the same place, talking. Our conversation was interrupted by a siren. An ambulance was rushing down the runway, followed by everyone who was at the start. "Something's happened, Igor." The planes seemed to have collided. "Run." Igor threw a cigarette under his feet, put it out and ran to where people were already crowding. I followed him. In front of us was an airplane smashed into splinters. The armoured glass of the lantern shattered into small shards. Tarakhanov was lying in the cockpit. He was pulled out, transferred to an ambulance, and taken away. Behind the broken airplane stood Il-2 with a punctured edge of the right wing. It was not difficult to guess that the culprit of this accident was Tarakhanov. It all happened because of his indiscipline. He arbitrarily sat in the airplane without looking around, and contrary to the prohibition of the starter, took the car for takeoff. Already at the end of the run-up, about 20 meters away, right in front of him, Nikolai saw Il-2, taxiing after landing, and sharply pulled the handle. The plane, going up and losing speed to critical, hit the right wheel plane of the taxiing Ilyushin, and from 25 to 30 meters collapsed down. Igor and I were devastated. Tarakhanov, an experienced, honored pilot, and suddenly such a thing. And because of what? Because of ambition, because of bravado. It's good that he survived. Then, when Nikolai returned from the hospital, he was announced for a gross disciplinary offence. He was suspended from flying, was demoted in rank. It was a harsh lesson for him and a warning for others. At the party and Komsomol meetings, the question of discipline, its direct interrelation with trouble-free operation, with combat readiness, with the whole way of army and front life was hotly and vividly discussed these days. April 29th, 1943 is a significant date for us. This day was declared the annual holiday of the regiment. Then we learned the joyful news: our regiment received a new number 75th, and the name of the Guards. Such a high honour it was awarded for the glorious feats of our senior comrades, Stalingraders. We share the joy of the veterans. We are proud that from now on we will be blessed with the Guards banner, but we know that this designation was obtained at a great and very expensive price with bravery and blood. All personnel information. The exciting and solemn ceremony of presenting the Guards banner to the regiment begins. It's the first time in my life I participate in such an event. The mood is high. The spring wind carries the bravura sounds of military marches on the steppe. Speaks General Rytov, and on behalf of the command of the 8th Air Army congratulates us on a remarkable event. Major Lykovsky, the regiment commander, kneels down, kisses the scarlet silk and pronounces the oath. His lips say the sacred words of the oath to everyone who stands in this line, who will go tomorrow into the fire of battle for the triumph of the great Leninist ideas, who is ready to spare neither blood nor life to achieve victory over the enemy. Then each of us was given a Guards badge. We were proud of it and realized that by pinning this badge on his uniform, the aviator gives an application for new martial deeds. We are Guardsmen, I pondered, and immediately asked myself, and what have you done special? What is your contribution? The next day again, training flights. Airplanes habitually take off and land. The engines are humming. Suddenly 36 Ilov are passing over us in parade formation. The ground shudders from the voices singing in unison. You bet. After all, their power more than 30,000 horsepower. New airplanes. Igor shouts in my ear and smiles. I rejoice too, now I won't be horseless. For about 20 minutes the airfield was alive with special tension. But then all the newly arrived planes rolled into the parking lots, and our training flights were continued. On my account, already several independent flights to the zone and the range. During this time I gained confidence in piloting the Ilyushin, learned to perform a clear takeoff and calculate the landing. Igor also mastered the program well. I am happy at heart. The sun is blazing hot, drying the ground. I throw my cap, unbuckle my belt, take off my uniform and expose my heated body to the spring wind. In the morning I could not raise my head. I could hardly gather my strength and came to the start. My arms and legs were breaking, my head was cracking. Junior Lieutenant Ned Balo, what's wrong with you? Asked the flight director. Are you sick? Not at all. I'm healthy. Obviously, it was not difficult to determine from both my voice and my appearance that I was not telling the truth. Immediately go to the sanitary unit, said the chief. From flying today, I'm suspending you. The nurse shoved a thermometer under my armpit and ran off somewhere. In about 7 minutes she came back, looked at the thermometer and handed it to the doctor who entered the room. He raised his eyebrows in surprise, took my hand, counted my pulse, and touched my forehead. Yes, my dear fellow, you have a real flu. Or maybe something more complicated. And the days dragged on, one more boring than the other. Bed rest. Medication. I was bitter at heart, offended my friends were flying, studying, and I was relieved only when Igor visited me. He would give me all the details, tell me how the classes were going, who was doing the program and how. I realized that Igor and other comrades had already surpassed me. Once again I scolded myself for my indiscretion. But what was there to do? On one of the long, dreary days of my illness, the girls came to see me. Katya was among them. The girls put flowers on the bedside table, cheered me up and left. Once again I was alone with my thoughts, worries and longings. Tarakhanov used to drop by. But he was silent, withdrawn. He answered questions dryly, one syllable. He had caused trouble, and now he repented. And I realized that he came to the infirmary not so much for my sake as for me to calm him down, to help him find his mental balance. Every time the doctor made his rounds, I talked about discharge. I explained that I felt fine, it was time to go back to the unit. The doctor mumbled something, groped me, listened to my heart, lungs. Finally, he said, "Well, my father-in-law, that's enough. You are free of our robe from now on." I was ready to hug this quiet, kind man, but I did not dare, it was uncomfortable somehow, and only warmly thanking the doctor for caring about my health, hurried to get my clothes. And now I was wearing my military uniform again. Igor met me with joyful news. Tomorrow the regiment is moving to a combat airfield, closer to the front line. But along with the joy came anxiety. I had fallen behind my comrades during the days of illness, and now I might not be taken. In the morning I presented myself to the commander. He was in a hurry, said hello, and did not say anything else. I see the pilots are preparing for the flight. And suddenly, an hour and a half later, Comrade Ned Balo, you'll stay in Kotelnikovo for the time being. I didn't hear what else the commander said. My head was buzzing like a multiple echo, you will stay. You will stay. I almost burst into tears from bitter resentment. It was somehow shameful and painful. By noon the airfield was deserted, except for the 5 defective airplanes left on it. Except Misameko and Igorishev were left. One of them did not get along with the takeoff. The other had a lame technique of piloting. Not all aviation specialists left. Tarakhanov was left behind. Why are you so down, young men? He consoled us. Heads up. Let's take it and create our own regiment. I'll be the commander. I'll appoint Junior Lieutenant Ned Balo as my deputy, Semaiko as navigator. And you, Igorishev, will be our subordinate. Agreed? Tarakhanov continued joking, but he failed to raise our spirits. A week passed, then another week in longing for friends, for flying. One day I met Tarakhanov. He's smiling. I could see that he was overjoyed about something. I'm flying with Bolderikin for new airplanes to the plant. It turns out that the deputy commander of the division, Colonel Bolderikin, arrived in Kotelnikovo. With him 5 pilots. What to think of? How to be, I was worried. Catching up with Tarakhanov. Nikolai, be a friend, put in a good word. Let him take me too. I'll manage, I give you my word, I won't let you down. All hope is in you. At first Tarakhanov laughed. Then he thought and said, All right, let's go. At the porch of the house where Bolderikin was staying, Nikolai suddenly stopped. No, I'm not going, Anatoly. I cannot. Oh, you. I got angry, ran up to the porch and knocked. Please come in, came from behind the door. I entered the spacious room, introduced myself and hesitated. I'm listening to you, Comrade Junior Lieutenant. The colonel said softly. I'll briefly state my request. Take me with you to ferry the Ilias. Everything that will be required to fulfill. The colonel gave me an attentive, warm look, smiled and said, Here's what, dear. Tomorrow at 6000 start control flights. You, Semeyko, Igorishev and Tarakhanov will be flying. Tell Tarakhanov to order him to prepare 2 airplanes, a combat and a pair. A sigh of relief escaped from my chest. Thank you, Comrade Colonel. I blurted out, delighted with such an unexpected turn of events, and shining excited ran out, forgetting to say goodbye in joy. The flights began exactly at 6 o'clock. The first control flight was performed by Tarakhanov. Semeyko with the colonel took off second. I stood at the start and carefully watched the actions of my comrades. I will not hide, I was very worried. It was clear that Colonel Bolderikin, an experienced school instructor, and from his trained eye will not escape the slightest of my mistakes. Here he will tell me whether I am ready for such a responsible business as the ferrying of airplanes. I repeat in my mind the whole order of actions, all the movements of the pilot at takeoff and landing. Here and Semeyko returned. He is replaced by Igorishev. Why is Semeyko gloomy, silent? It means something's wrong. It's my turn. I put on my parachute, sat in the cockpit, controlling my every move. I feel that Bolderikin keeps an eye on me. I check if everything is in order, and on the ATC report. Ready for takeoff. Perform a flight in a circle. I hear the colonel's voice. I took off. Performed the first turn, second, third, fourth. I'm leading the car down. Height of 100 meters, 50. Tighten up, says the colonel, and immediately increases the engine speed. The ground is getting closer and closer. Here is already the plane touches its wheels and runs on the dirt strip. One more flight in a circle. Gives an order Bolderikin. I performed the second flight without any remarks. Well, will you fly on your own? Bolderikin asked. I'll fly, Comrade Colonel. I authorized 3 flights in a circle. I performed them with an excellent rating. It's nice to hear praise from such an experienced mentor as Colonel Bolderikin. The grey-green Douglas, with the ferryman on board, landed at the factory airfield, where 16 brand new Ilos were lined up. They still smelled of fresh paint. On the wings, brightly burned scarlet stars. The deputy commander explained the task: these airplanes we have to transfer to Leninsk. We will take off in pairs, said Tarakhanov. Before takeoff you will be on my right. I was confused. It's easy to say we'll take off in pairs. But I have only seen how others do it. And I haven't flown in formation yet. But don't give up. Let's take off. We gained altitude. It was a little difficult to fly in pairs without a show. First landing. I taxi, put the plane next to Tarakhanov's car and turn off the engine. My ears are ringing and the silence seems unnatural. And the day was surprising. The rays of the May sun are blinding my eyes. Jumping down from the plane, I went to the deputy commander. Good, Comrade Junior Lieutenant, I heard from the leader. You have successfully passed the first exam. Now prepare for the next stage of the flight. Encouraged by these words, I hurried to my airplane. But my joy immediately disappeared at the sight of Tarakhanov. With an angry face, Nikolai was nervously biting some stalk. How many times flew in formation? He asked me sternly. Now here for the first time. Why did not warn? Exploded Tarakhanov. What, you wanted to jeopardize both yourself and me? I guiltily kept silent. Tarakhanov was right, of course. But you understand, I finally dared, because everything depended on this flight. And I cannot wait, I must beat the enemy, like you, like my schoolmates. Tarakhanov threw away the bitten stem and said conciliatingly, All right, it's my fault too, I didn't take into account that you're a novice pilot. I should have worked with you on the ground. You make a lot of mistakes. Here Tarakhanov analysed the mistakes, told how to act in this or that case, and in conclusion he said, Now get ready for the flight. ... 4 distances, 4 practical lessons. I mastered piloting in pairs and as part of an 8-man crew. It gave me strength and confidence. I was also lucky in that I was entrusted to transfer the combat vehicle to one of the frontline airfields. So I had the opportunity to work out the shaving flight and a tight formation of 6 attack aircraft. And here, finally, my native regiment, ... to is this clutching me in a tight embrace. Igor. You. We shake hands, happy to see each other together again, near each other again. We share news. I tell Igor about my flights. He listened to me, then proudly informs me. I already have 4 combat missions. I am heartily happy for my friend. When is my turn? The squadron commander was interested in everything down to the smallest details, how my health, and how much time I spent in the air, and with whom I flew. The latter, as I realized, was especially important for Bikbilatov to know. And when I answered, with Tarakhanov, Bikbilatov nodded his head approvingly and smiled with the corner of his lips. I already knew from Tarakhanov that he was friends with Bikbilatov and Zaplavsky. Battle twinning of 3 brave pilots, Russian, Tatar and Ukrainian, was born and strengthened in the hot skies of Stalingrad. And now they were always together. You will be my wingman, said Bikbilatov with a noticeable accent. Flight number of your airplane is 32. Go to the plane, get acquainted with the crew. I didn't walk, but flew to the plane. You bet. The wing commander is taking me as his wingman. The first to introduce himself to me was the mechanic of the plane, Sergeant Motovilov. From the cockpit of the air gunner looked out a bright-eyed young man. He smiled, immediately jumped down and clearly reported. Senior Sergeant Maliuk, your air gunner, Commander. So we'll fly together. A firm handshake cemented our alliance. Where are you from? I asked, although judging by the surname, by the noticeable accent, one could immediately realize that Maliuk was from Ukraine. There is a town called Korsun. Maybe, Charlie, so I'm from there. I liked this guy right away. When I learned that his name was Anton, I was happy. You and I are namesakes, so it turns out. That's great. I told him that I was registered by my parents as Anton, but when I grew up, I decided to change my name to the more common one, Anatoly. We got to talking. Anton Maliuk was born in the village of Nabutov, Cherkasy region. He joined the army in 1940 by Komsomol recruitment, studied at the Kharkov School of Junior Aviation Specialists, became a motorist. In the most difficult days for the motherland, in the midst of the Battle of Stalingrad, Anton Maliuk applied to the party. When the regiment began to receive L-2 airplanes, Maliuk was one of the first to appeal to the regiment command with a request to send him to the courses of aerial gunners, so that, as he wrote in his application, to participate directly in the battles against the Nazis. That day I got acquainted with the mechanic of armament, Private Sasha Cherkova, and motorist, Private Anatoly Baranov. So the crew of the airplane was in full force. And at that time the enemy was striving at any cost to suspend the Soviet offensive. Along the northern Donets and Mayas there was a powerful defensive line of fascists, which had to overcome the units and formations of the Southern Front, which received the task to liberate Donbass from Hitlerites. One of those days was especially memorable for me. The night before the squadron commander, Captain Krivoshlike, warned tomorrow there would be a combat sortie. The whole regiment will fly. So tomorrow my first battle. I spent the night anxiously, excitedly waited for dawn, hurried events. In the morning I jumped up, had breakfast and went to the airfield. At the parking lot engines are already murmuring the engines are being tested. From airplane to airplane rushing gasoline refuelers brought cylinders of compressed air. Hear the voices of mechanics and motorists. Preparation of aircraft for departure is in full swing. How are you feeling, Mood, Comrade Ned Balo? I turned around my commander Bikbilatov. Neat, trim, clean-shaven. Everything is all right, Comrade Guards Lieutenant. I answered cheerfully. Not a word about sleeping badly, of course. That's good. Do you have the map? Is the situation clear? Is the route laid out? Let me see your tablet. You see the Sofiano-Brodskaya railroad station? According to our intelligence, the fascists are unloading tanks and cannons here. This is the target for the strike. Soon I was already sitting in the cabin, waiting. The minutes dragged languidly. The sky seemed to widen, lifted above the horizon line. And suddenly a bright point soared up, spattered with green sparks. That's the signal to launch. The engines roared 18 voices at once, and went Ilyushin to the start. 3 6s one, after another in 3 rows lined up on the runway. My car in the last row. I'll be left flanking, next to Bikbilatov. We are waiting for the signal for takeoff. It is given by the regiment commander, Guards Major Lykovsky. Today he himself leads us into battle. I have already heard a lot about him. This is a recognized master of assault strikes, courageous and decisive in battle. Heard more than once, as pilots admired his art of striking from the dive. They respected Major Lykovsky for his humanity, responsiveness, endurance and tactfulness. There was no case that he offended someone. He talked to everyone as an equal with an equal. He listened attentively to his interlocutor, weighed arguments, liked to get to the truth, was fair. ... Here comes the signal. The planes are rushing across the flat field, soaring upwards. Course on the target. Suddenly the sky lit up with bursts of explosions. Anti-aircraft guns are beating. Oerlikon trails are stretching towards us. The first 6 bombed. On the ground fireworks, purple bursts of fire. I don't understand what is burning, either tanks, or the railroad station itself. All the time looking at the tail number of the commander's car would not break away from the Bic. Airplane leading, as if reluctantly tumbles to the left wing and enters the dive. In front, literally in front of the nose, swept the plane of Igor Kalatin. I turn the handle away from myself, I repeat the maneuver. I press the bomb thrower button twice, and 400s fly down. I see ruptures below. Bikbilatov repeats the approach. I'm behind him. Caution 03, keep up. I hear the commander's voice. The machine shudders. I'm firing from cannons and machine guns. I'm shooting long bursts, untargeted. I cannot distribute my attention. Too much to keep track of the leader. The target anti-aircraft guns fire. To the right and left of me, huge birds are swiftly passing airplanes. Heights the end of the attack. Transmits the commander of our group. But where are my comrades, marching in the 3rd 6? Where is Bic? Try to figure it out. What will the commander say? Oh, blind, I'm confused. I'm adjusting myself to the airplane ahead. Taking a closer look at the tail number of the car, I find out that it's not a Bika airplane. And its colouring is somewhat different from our cars. I check the compass. And so it deviated from the course. So I got lost, joined another group. I move aside and take an approximate course. Soon I notice a familiar landmark and sigh with relief. Of course it was our airfield. Suddenly the engine vibrated. RPMs dropped. What's the matter? As I hastily search for a clue, the ground is inexorably approaching. There are only seconds left to make a decision. We must land immediately. But I can't go to the landing strip. I'll disturb the other planes. I choose an area to the side, sharply pull back the handle, increasing speed. Immediately I start counting seconds. Landing gear to release. Impact. Ilyushin jumped, hovered in the air, touched the ground again with its wheels and rolled across the field. Oh, Commander. I hear Malyuk's anxious voice, behind the smoke. The car moves a few tens of meters and stops on the spot. I jump out of the cabin, Malyuk too. He immediately starts throwing earth on the burning engine. I rush to his aid. Mechanics and motorists run up with fire extinguishers, knocking down the flames. Thank you, comrades, saved the airplane. I feel bitter. I'm completely upset I lost the leading man, fought off the group, burned the engine. At the plane appear Regimental Engineer Captain Klubov and technician of our squadron's senior technician, Lieutenant Dmitry Odintsov. Inspect the machine, something they say among themselves. About what I do not understand, I simply do not care about them now. Then I catch it. It's nothing, says Captain Klubov. We'll repair the plane. The main thing is that the people are safe, alive and unharmed. Don't despair, my friend. He smiled at me, wanting to cheer me up somehow. You can always fix the car, but the pilot. Klubov did not finish the sentence, but its meaning was clear. And in his tone, and in the way he, slightly pushing me, said, "Go, report to the commander about the flight, and I'll report about the car myself." There was so much fatherly that I even took a step back, not knowing what to say to Klubov, and went to the control room. I approached the commander of the link. At me point blank, aimed at his wide-open dark brown eyes. Bick sharply throws me. Report. Comrade Lieutenant. I raised my hand to the helmet phone. The task was accomplished, but... The lieutenant interrupted me. But what? But, do you know that you left the leader over the target without cover, that you brought your own airplane to such a state? And caution call sign. Not a caution, but a tailless goat. The last words hurt me the most. I flared up, but managed to restrain myself. The statute does not provide for excuses in such a case, especially since Bick was right. But what's the use of a goat, and a tailless one at that? And Bick raged for a long time, sternly reprimanded me and finally said, "You may go. I advise you to think hard about what you have done today and what feats distinguished." I didn't know where to put myself. Tired and frustrated, I wandered behind the hillside, took off my helmet and lay down on the grass. In solitude, I analysed what had happened several times, and came to the conclusion no one would let me fly again, would not take me on a combat mission. My eyes looked upward, into the clear, transparent depth of the sky. To the left, a ridge of white clouds slowly floated up, and I suddenly remembered the same blue sky above my head in another place near Kramatorsk. The year 1940. Summer. My instructor Nuzhny, an experienced pilot, a participant of the battles on Khalkhin Gol, after 2 control flights on the U-2, allowed me to fly independently. And here I am lifting the U-2 towards the sun. Strange, somehow there is no instructor in the front cabin. The engine roars. I feel joyful excitement. I subordinated the machine to my will, to my hands found wings, defeated the elements. From now on the sky is mine. Everything was going well, until after the 4th turn I did not take the airplane down. The ground is rushing up, and I'm waiting for something. I level the plan, but I forget to give the engine speed. As a result, the speed is lost. The airplane falls over on the left wing, hits the left wheel on the ground, bounces, once again hits and turns almost 180 degrees. Turned off the engine. I got out of the cabin. I see cadets are running to me. Nuzhny approaches the airplane, examines it, orders the cadets to pull the U-2 by the tail to the side, where it will be repaired. It turned out that the metal landing gear strut had broken. The left underwing wishbone had broken. I took off as a birthday boy, but after such a landing I was upset and depressed. The instructor stood aside, smoking, waiting for the repair to be completed. I wish he had scolded me, I thought. It would be easier on my soul. And then there, with what a reproach, look at me, guys. But Nuzhny was unperturbed, and then I went to him. Comrade instructor, from excitement I did not recognize my voice. It seemed as if these words were spoken by someone else. I did not have time to finish the sentence. From the airplane came Dun Nuzhny, threw an unsmoked cigarette under his feet, carefully crumpled it with the toe of his boot and went to the car. I followed him. He walked around the airplane, carefully inspected it, and, turning to me, said, "Sit down." I quickly climbed into the cockpit. The instructor came up to me. "Consider that I saw nothing. Deal. Will you fly?" "Of course I'll fly," I answered cheerfully. I made 3 flights around the circle without any remarks. No, not all is lost. I shouted to my comrades when I pulled into the parking lot and turned off the engine. "I will fly. I will, I will." The guys smiled and congratulated me. Excited, happy, I hugged my instructor and said, "Thank you for everything." I thanked him for his science and generosity of soul. Then I went to the step, warm, ringing, smelling grass, lay on my back and dreamed. He looked into the bottomless depth of the blue ocean, where clouds were quietly floating. ... visible and imaginary, past and present intertwined in me. And I, calmed down, came to my senses. And only Nuzhny was a man whose surname suited the moment. Couldn't Bikbilatov be the same? I thought. Tolka, son of a demon. And I've been knocking myself out, I can't find you. It's Igor. He's standing over me, smiling. Congratulations on your baptism of fire. He pushes me to the side and shakes my hand. I know how hard it is in the first. Tried it, and you landed your Ilyusha well. Well, at least you don't incite me. I snapped at you, regretting that my memories had come to an end. Don't be angry. All sorts of things happen in our business. Come on, let's go. I walked to the parking lot, looking for my plane. I see Igor's car, but next to it is an empty space. My heart squeezed. My attack plane number 32 should be here. But there's no airplane. Anton Maliuk is talking about something with his colleague, an air gunner, flying with Kalitin. Igor called them over and suddenly said excitedly, "Others, let our combat friendship always and everywhere be inviolable. On the ground and in air combat we will stand for each other. We will." With one voice we exclaimed, and 4 hands joined, affirming the inviolability of this oath. "Let's go dancing." Igor suggested me when we were leaving the dining room after dinner. "Brother, we need to shake things up. It's all about fighting and fighting. And what girls there are in our regiment." Obviously encouraging me, he smiled slyly. I don't remember when I danced. Youth takes its toll. During the day you get so exhausted that you literally fall off your feet, and in the evening, look where the fatigue disappeared. As we approached the long, perhaps the most spacious house in the village, I shuddered when I heard the soft, velvety tones of the accordion. They were playing the same waltz that I had loved in Elysium light and enchanting. The sounds tenderly touch my heart, disturb it, excite it, make it happy, reminding me of the life which is called pre-war. Now this waltz sounded in the half-dark hall of Barilokrepinsk Rural Club. He too, like all of us, fought in the war, called for a feat of arms in the name of victory. The old accordion filled the room with sad or major melody, and to these courageous people, who today looked death in the eyes, it sang about human tenderness, about life, about love. Among the dancers there are many girls. Some of them are dressed in military uniforms, the rest in colourful dresses. They are locals. Couples are circling. Lieutenant Sorokin, a technician of the unit, sits on a chair by the wall and, dreamily half closing his eyes, plays. Igor pulls me by the hand. Look to the right, what girls? I don't know any of them. Ask them to dance, and you'll get to know them. But I told you I don't dance well. Igor laughed. What's so complicated about it? Move your feet to the beat of the music. I slowly crossed the hall, heading for the far corner, where a group of girls in military uniforms stood, and suddenly, yes, it was her Katya Ilyushina, her uniform neatly ironed, boots polished to a shine, slim and trim. I went towards her, but I was too late. Without seeing me, Igor jumped up to Katya, bowed gallantly and said, "May I?" And behind him me with a confused face. The girl looked at both of them and, hesitating for a second, extended her hand to Igor. She smiled warmly and sincerely at me. Lost in the crowd, I watched Igor and Katya with jealous eyes. Then I wandered toward the exit and left. In the morning, Igor asked me, "Why did you run away? I wanted to introduce you to Katya, but you disappeared. Do you know her last name?" "Ilyushina. I asked if she was the daughter of our airplane designer." "No," she said. Igor was rushing with words. I didn't say a word. After breakfast, Igor and I went to the debriefing. Major Lykovsky analyzed in detail the operation carried out by the entire regiment. Nikolai Tarakanov sat next to me. "Why are you sitting like a cloud?" I asked him as if nothing had happened yesterday. "Happy baptism of fire." "Bik is my pupil. I put him on his feet, and now he teaches you and educates you. Be glad that you got such a commander." I was surprised. It means that Tarakanov knows nothing about what happened between us. It turns out that Bik Bilatov did not say a single word about my shame. He told me, the culprit, everything that he thought, but he told his closest friend nothing. In the depths of my soul, I felt respect for the commander of the link. Tarakanov somewhat distracted me with a conversation, and I initially did not really catch what Lykovsky was talking about. Someone praised, someone taught. Still, I understood in general the flight of the regiment was successful. And my merit in this is not, I thought bitterly. Junior Lieutenant Ned Balo. I jumped up from my seat, hands at the seams. "Yesterday he performed his first combat sortie," said Lykovsky. "We can congratulate the young pilot on this significant event. But that's not all. He made a smart decision to land the damaged machine aside, so as not to jeopardize other planes. He landed successfully. For this I thank you, Comrade Ned Balo." "I served the Soviet Union," I mouthed. The commander paused for a moment, then said softly, "I hope that you have already realized your mistake and will not allow such things in the future, and that the engine caught fire. The fault of the enemy, a shell fragment, was punctured oil radiator. It is good that in the air you were not confused and on the ground acted decisively, quickly localized the fire. Sit down." Wow. A stone off my shoulders. Lieutenant Bik Bilatov told me off. Major Lykovsky, on the contrary, praised me and gave me a commendation. Well, I'll tell you in order how it all happened. At first everything went well. Held wing to wing. We reorganized at the target and started to attack. Suddenly the anti-aircraft guns struck. It seemed that the enemy concentrated all the fire only on my plane. Not that I was confused, but for some reason I got lost. Something distracted me, and here's the result. I threw bombs untargeted, fell behind the leader. And I took offense at Bik Bilatov. You can't only call him a goat for such deeds. But Bik, albeit harshly, rudely, but still told the truth. It could have ended worse, both for me and for him. Later I noticed that in our squadron we used to clean up each other, if of course there was a reason for it. It was done directly, frankly, and was taken without offence. And everyone knew in a friendly, strong team the remark of a comrade for the benefit of the common cause. After several combat sorties I felt more confident over the target. I was no longer disturbed by anti-aircraft fire. The leader was making an anti-aircraft maneuver, and so was I. I understood it well and acted according to the situation. But I could not yet understand what was happening on the ground. To find the target, on which exactly strike, I could not. And I was required not only to cover the leader and not lose sight of the target, but also to fix the slightest changes in the enemy's defence. Days passed, and gaining experience, I began to notice everything that was important for a pilot to see, whether it was in the air or on the ground. One day after breakfast, Kalatin and I took refuge in the shade of a reed canopy and indulged in memories. Those were some special moments. The pilots, every minute looking death in the eyes, did not think of themselves. They were completely absorbed in the business, which was called rather prosaic combat work. And in rare moments of calm we anxiously talked about our loved ones, about whom we had not known anything for 2 years, often saw in dreams, and for whom our war-scarred hearts longed. At the command post we saw our commander, Lieutenant Bikbilatov. "Let's go to the regiment, Commander," he said. Guards Major Liakovsky greeted us and immediately began to explain why he called us. The fascist command has high hopes for its defensive rampart on the so-called Mayas front. The fascists have built here pillboxes and bunkers, anti-tank and anti-personnel obstacles. Hitler demands to delay the Soviet troops in this area, by all means, emphasizing that the Mayas River decides the fate of Donbass. The regiment commander paused, walked around the table and continued. "The regiment received an order to perform a special task. I decided to entrust it to you. The essence of the task is as follows. On the front line in the area of Semenovsky and Kalinovka settlements, we have to put a smokescreen at a height of 15 to 20 meters. From the ground, the commander showed on the map a piece of terrain and a height of 196.0, over which we were to fly. The ground units are waiting for help from us, aviators. Fly in threes, there will be no cover. The difficulty lies also in the fact that in this area the enemy has concentrated a lot of anti-aircraft weapons," emphasized Liakovsky. "The task will be accomplished," clearly pronounced Bikbilatov. I felt both joy and excitement. I was happy to realize that the commander of the unit entrusted me, a young pilot, such a responsible task, and also because Bikbilatov still sees me as a caution. "Well, are you satisfied?" asked me our Bik. "Not scary?" "The case is unusual, quite complicated." Bikbilatov thoroughly explained to me in Kalyagin what to do in this or that area, clarified the details. It is necessary to accurately, suddenly and of course secretly go to the specified area he instructed us. At first we will go in an open formation. Over the last control point of the route we will switch to a soaring flight, and in front of the enemy coast we will make a slide. We will fire eraser positions of the fascists and again switch to a soaring flight. I will be the first to release the chemical composition from both UHAPs in turn. As soon as you see smoke coming from under my car, you, Kalitin, count 12 seconds, and then press the button to release the mixture. Then Ned Balo. We plotted the route on the map, calculated the course, the distance. Then we were instructed in detail by the head of the chemical service of the regiment, Captain Prodan. Once again, now together with their air gunners, clarify the specifics of the special task, outline the plan of fire interaction. Approached the regiment commander and chief of staff. So, exactly at 12:15 instructed us Major Liakovsky, you need to be over the target. Your appearance will serve as a signal to ground units to begin forcing the waterline. I wish you good luck, and shook hands with everyone. The airplanes were already prepared for departure. Our Alyushins look somewhat unusual cigar-shaped containers are suspended under the wings on the outer locks. Take a seat in the cockpit, waiting for the signal. Here comes the rocket. The propellers rocked and turned. We've tested the engines in all modes. Everything is in order, we can launch. Bikbilatov's car is taking off. Behind him goes Kalitin. I'm flying third. I feel how hard the airplane comes off the ground. This is understandable. First, chemical devices significantly increased the flight weight of the attack aircraft, and secondly, the aerodynamic characteristics of the machine has changed. For some time we go the usual formation, then descend and fly at a strafing. Under the wings flashed buildings, trees, roads. I note with satisfaction that I already know how to distribute attention. Now it is not stuck only to the leader. Suddenly Bikbilatov gains altitude. Kalitin and I do the same. So we are approaching the target I guessed. All the time I keep in sight of the commander's car, throwing a quick glance ahead. Behind the winding ribbon of the river can be seen mottled with fiery flashes of the area. Grey, whitish, black plumes mix in the distance, forming a foggy haze. The front. Somewhere around here is the area we need. Go and find it, I thought. Below us is the river Mias. We pass over the river at an angle of 20 degrees. In the helmet, the voice of the link commander. Fire. Bik-Bulatov's attack aircraft dives down. I repeat the maneuver. Like the leader, I press the guns and machine guns, the button for launching rockets. The steady hum of the engine is intertwined with hissing eras, thrown out from under the wings of elastic fire jets, carried away on the enemy. A shiver runs through the airplane. The guns and machine guns work without fail. I seem to merge with the machine. In the soul, an incomparable feeling. No, it is not excitement, it is the triumph of a fighter, bringing the enemy retribution. The ground is rushing towards me. Under the wings are passing trenches, firing points, flickering in search of cover figures. Don't get distracted, I command myself. A very crucial moment is coming, and I watch the leading man's car closely. Here is a bundle of thick white smoke bursts out from under the flying ahead of the commander's assault aircraft. I see that Kalitin has also activated the first chemical device. 1, 2, 3. 6 I count in my mind. Air gunners, as it was stipulated by the plan, open a quick fire on the ground. And I keep counting ... 11, 12. I press the button and count to 6. Then I release it and press it again. White jets of smoke stretch into the distance, swell, blur over the ground. A few more seconds pass. Bik-Bulatov steeply gains altitude, then throws the car down, left-right fires. Igor and I repeat his actions. Having performed an anti-aircraft maneuver, the whole wing turns around and takes a course for our airfield. Everything is normal, I rejoice. And over the river, over the bank, along the front edge of the enemy stretched a wide and dense wall of white smoke. Increased distances, intervals. Bik-Bulatov transmits on the radio. I take the plane to the left of the leading. Kalitin retreats to the right. The distance to the plane of the leading increased, and I, feeling somehow more free, and look at the ground, on the machine leading. He pilots great. Pull up. Take your places. Orders Bik-Bulatov. So, we'll be landing soon. We approach the airfield at a low angle in a tight battle formation. We landed. We are immediately surrounded by aviation specialists. Well, everything is in order. We have successfully completed the mission, says Bik-Bulatov. The guys are smiling. How not to understand them? After all, with their hard work, diligence, knowledge, experience, skill, they are also fighting the enemy, contribute to the success of their combat friend and comrade the pilot. He won the victory in the air battle. He perfectly completed a difficult task. It means that all together, inflicted damage to the enemy. Having inspected the airplanes and reported to the link commander, we are together with him, talking cheerfully, going to the command post. And you showed yourself well today, Ned Balo. Well done. Way to go. Bik extends his hand to me. His dark eyes are smiling. Thank you, Commander. I'll keep it up. Major Lykovsky listened carefully to Bik-Bulatov's report, asked a few questions, then smiled and said, Thank you, comrades. You have helped the ground units a lot. Now rest. ... The sun had already risen above the horizon and warmed the engine hoods, which had cooled down during the night. A new day begins. We are at the airplanes waiting for the signal for a combat flight, but time goes by and there is no command. Soon everything became clear. At 9:40 the sky shot up PO2 and sat down. By this time all personnel was built here on the airfield. It turns out that the deputy commander of the 8th Air Army General Rostov flew in. Greeting us, he said, Comrades, yesterday your regiment accomplished a difficult and responsible task, helped our troops to force the Mayas River. The enemy captured 5 strongly fortified strongholds. The offensive is successfully developing. Lieutenant Bik-Bulatov was awarded the Order of the Red Banner for courage and bravery shown in the performance of the combat task. Junior Lieutenants K. Deaton and Ned Balo the Order of the Red Star. I shuddered. Really? No, we must be talking about someone else. But there are no namesakes in the regiment. So the general is referring to me. And the formation was already applauding, shining, rejoicing. Excitement swept over me. Someone is pushing me, don't hesitate. Come out of the ranks. I served the Soviet Union. I exhaled, accepting my first government award from the general's hands. How to justify such a high honour? What deeds to confirm that worthy to wear on the chest award of the fatherland? I took this order as a pledge of new combat victories. It inspired me, it called me to fight courageously and skillfully. Like, for example, oh, you don't need to go far for a model it was for me, a commander, a brave pilot, a master of assault strikes Lieutenant Bikbilatov. I wish the rocket would fly up into the sky sooner. To fight, to fight. My heart was pounding. The day was really summer hot. Igor and I, sheltered from the sun under the wing of the airplane, spent time waiting for the next flight and silently looked around the area. Wheat was yellowing on the hillside, and a soft breeze was playfully rolling waves across the field. In the gardens, the bountiful gifts of summer were flowing with juice, and the skylark sang incessantly in the heights. Nature was doing its eternal work, and if there were no craters, no ashes, no echoes of distant explosions, one would have thought that there was no war at all, that all that had been experienced was a heavy tribute. But in the distance some figures appeared in the meadow. Making rhythmic movements they approached us. Kossari. I whispered, as if a loudly spoken word might frighten them away. They were quite close, and now we could distinguish two old men in white shirts, behind them an invalid in a faded uniform, some teenagers and 10 or 12 women with sharp scythes in their hands. My heart clenched. It was not a woman's job to sweat 100 sweats. But what can you do? Men are at war. Life demanded, and women became ploughmen and mowers. They went to factories and plants, replacing their husbands and brothers, went down into the mines, and many put on overcoats to join the fighting ranks. I thought of my mother. How is she? What's wrong with her? How is my father, my little sister? With the beginning of my front life anxiety about home, about loved ones, much more intensified. Maybe it was explained by the fact that every time I took a map in my hands, and having understood my combat task, I quickly estimated the distance from the front line to my native Izium. It was getting shorter and shorter. What if I was sent to this area, and I quickly made calculations? Was it possible not to feel excitement at such moments if you needed only a few tens of minutes to fly to your native home? But I knew that I had to fly to another region. Just like in Izium, pilots are waiting for us there. They are waiting for our help, waiting for deliverance from fascist captivity. Igor, apparently, was thinking the same thing as I was. He suddenly broke the silence. I have to write a letter to my parents, and took out a pencil and a thin student's notebook from his clipboard. Don't forget to say hello from me, I reminded him. Igor's parents lived in Moscow and were strangers to me. But I, deprived of the opportunity to inform my relatives about myself, wanted very much to write a couple of warm words at least to the relatives of my comrade in arms. Igor, as if guessing my thoughts, tore a sheet out of his notebook and handed it to me. Write to. Yours? You can write to mine, but first yours. Where to? Raisins haven't been liberated yet. It will be soon. Kalitin said confidently. It's just a stone's throw away. I looked at him with gratitude. Thank you, friend. Hello, my dears. I began slowly gathering my thoughts, I deduce. I am writing, not being sure that you will receive this message. I'm alive and well. I'm at the front. Very worried about you. Be well. Loving you, Anatoly. He folded the sheet into a triangle, wrote the address, indicated his field mail, and returning the pencil to Igor, sighed. It won't get there anyway, and put the letter in the clipboard. Igor, not answering anything, continued writing, and when he finished the letter he turned to me. You know what, Anatoly? When the war is over, you and I will go to Moscow. My parents are worldly, honestly wonderful. In the meantime, give me your triangle, I'll take it to headquarters in the evening with mine, and send it to you. Our ground units were advancing with fighting, slowly but inevitably. The enemy, despite the fact that he replenished his units with fresh reserves and increased firepower, could not hold back the onslaught of Soviet troops. There were almost continuous battles on the ground and in the air. Our regiment actively participated in them, supporting the operations of ground troops, striking at clusters of enemy combat vehicles, storming its airfields, resistance nodes and communications. One August morning, the squadron commander gathered us and informed us about the upcoming flight. At the airfield Kutinikovo, the enemy has concentrated up to 80 aircraft, which are raiding our advancing troops. Squadron will strike as part of the regiment, said the commander. On the task will go 3-6, headed by the navigator of the regiment, Major Suklishkinin. We must suddenly go to the area Kutinikovo and make 2 runs. I will have to storm an enemy airfield for the first time. The flight is in the afternoon. And now we must prepare for it. In the conditions of the front airfield, each pilot adapts as he is more comfortable. I took out the map, spread it out on the unfolded tablet. I put the tablet directly on the ground and, squatting on the ground, with the help of a navigator's ruler, I draw with a pencil the route segments from one settlement to another, course angles, mark the distance and flight time. The target is circled in red. The distance to the front line and back was almost 50 kilometers. Until now, I had to go deeper into the enemy's rear, no more than 15 kilometers. Once again, I think over the route, mentally visualize my actions during the flight across the front line, over the territory occupied by the enemy, over the target. 1, after another 6 attack planes took off and headed west. I'm flying on the left, third from the commander. Our 6 are accompanied by 4 Yak. We know our fighter friends are looking into the airspace, looking for the enemy, ready at any second to fight with him, not to let him prevent us from fulfilling a responsible task. The altitude is 900 meters. From here, the Earth seems to me a big map, where instead of conventional symbols, real groves, hills, valleys, where on the blue veins of rivers noticeable openwork drawings of bridges, and on the webs of roads guess the iron snake of the enemy tank column, where the glimmer of fire behind the blue forest demask anti-aircraft battery, where a quietly slumbering grassland may be an enemy airfield, which should be fired upon. What can you do? The war taught us to see the land in a different way, the very sun-dappled land that smells of grass, breathes warmth and rings with the call of grasshoppers. Now other associations: a river is a water frontier, a hill, an enemy stronghold, a forest, a shelter for fascist equipment. I'm flying, reading the ground. Now the front line is under my wings. Flashes of fire, smoke. There's a hot battle going on. Not far from me, on the right side of the course, bursts are blowing up its anti-aircraft guns. But the formation of planes is not broken, the effectiveness of the fire in pursuit is low, and therefore the leader takes the group of 6 further, to the west, without taking anti-aircraft maneuver. I concentrated all my attention on piloting the airplane, trying to follow strictly behind Lieutenant Bikbilatov's machine. And yet I feel anxious. The reason for it is clear to me. Before that, I flew to storm the enemy, who was not far from the front line. In case of what, on the way back to my own people, I could go to my rear, behind the fighting order of our troops. And now the matter is quite different. I try to pull myself together. The fleeting anxiety melts away as the morning fog melts under the sun. I suddenly remembered the mowers, 2 old men, and invalid teenagers, women. Tired eyes looked out from under frowning eyebrows. I realized that each of these people was working for 10 people. They had to do a lot to revive the land, which had recently been trampled by the enemy. They needed victory. They needed it as soon as possible. And who knows, I thought, maybe on me, on whether my today's attack will be successful, depends on whether the husband of the young woman who waved a white kerchief after us when the stormtroopers went to take off will come home. Height 1,100 meters. The first pair of the leading 6 rearranges to the right bearing. All perform the same maneuver. So we're close to the target. The first 6 has already attacked. Behind her the second. Around the airplanes burst shells. My heart thumped. A few more seconds and I also attack the target. Below, if you extend the dive line of the second 6, you can see the sun bunnies. So it is enemy planes. They stand in groups around the woods, fringing the yellow meadow. Following the commander, I put my car into a dive. The leader strikes with rockets. I also press the RS button. In 2 or 3 seconds, the enemy planes disappear in dark grey clouds of explosions. Carefully watching the leader. He takes the plane out of dive. Immediately the hatches of his Ilyushin open, and dark drops of bombs fall from the plane. I press the bomb drop button twice, and my attack aircraft, bouncing slightly, is also freed from the bomb load. After that we make a left turn and, having gained altitude, leave. I look down over the parking lots of enemy planes is billowing smoke, through which shine through orange flames. There is no doubt after our eras and bombs from the fascist airfield left only the name. I take my place in the battle order. The first 2-6 once again go to the target. Here and there bursts it opened fire enemy anti-aircraft guns, covering the airfield. Here and we are whizzing through the thick grey-black caps. The cabin smelled of gunpowder. The commander is firing long bursts from cannons and machine guns. I do the same and a rhythmic shiver runs through the plane. Down there is another hearth of fire. Again we leave the attack to the left with a gain in altitude. Bodyguards diligently guarding us, peering into the sky. And suddenly the yaks disappear. What is it? Cover, I'm attacking. I hear someone's voice in my helmet. So the cover fighters have entered the battle. The altitude is 700 meters. Our pair takes a place to the left of the leading group. This increases the firepower of the 6. Let's go home. The mission is successfully completed, and it pleases me. All is well. No losses. But what's that? A ringing thump. The car tilted to the left, then began to descend sharply. I turn the knob to the right, the roll disappears, but the dive angle keeps increasing. Take the wheel. The airplane doesn't react. I reduce the speed to minimum, pull the handle with force. The machine is somehow reluctant to come out of the dive. Tail intact? I ask Maliuk. Damaged. He answers. The shells broke the stabilizer. Mesa, Baisova Dushova hit. At long range. Why didn't you fire on it? There was a delay with the machine gun. Explains the air gunner. I notice that Maliuk's nerves are strong, and nothing betrays his excitement. Except for his speech, in such cases he speaks Russian or switches to Ukrainian. The situation is getting more complicated by the second. We have to find a way out, because it's still a long way home. The pair is attacking, shouts Maliuk. On the right, 700 meters above us, I notice a pair of Focke-Wulfs. They obviously intend to attack us. Fire. Short bursts, sparingly. I tell Maliuk, forgetting about the machine gun malfunction. And the Fokkers are about to open fire. Suddenly, the machine gun rang behind me. The gunner managed to fix the malfunction. Well done, Maliuk. I shout, give them some heat. Yes, Anton Maliuk, who managed to quickly eliminate the delay and in time to meet the fire attacking us Fokkers, was really good. And just then the yaks came back and attacked the Fokkers. One of them caught fire, began to fall, unwinding a black spiral of smoke, flash, and the enemy plane exploded in the air. The second Fokker, dodging the attacking yaks, managed to catch us in the sights. In the right plane, Ilyushin zazi out torn holes, fluttered plywood and percale shreds of plating. I am worried that under the pressure of the oncoming airflow holes at any second can increase, and then the machine will lose stability. Carefully move the airplane first to the right, then to the left roll. I repeat. Ilyushin behaves normally. I wish I could make it home. Our group has gone forward, and my downed plane is flying alone in the endless sky. And then Maliuk reports a cartridge in the machine gun receiver is skewed, and it can't be pulled out. 2 Focke-Wulfs are catching up with us. They come closer. They dive. There are still 7 kilometers to the front line. It's going to be a tough fight. The only thing I can oppose the Fokkers is maneuver. The Fokkers are already in actual firing range. They're about to send out a trail of fire. I take over the handle and the airplane, sharply back the nose, goes up. Overload, of course, the limit. The speed drops to a minimum. I completely reduce the revolutions. turn the crane shields in the released position, and the plane for a fraction of a second, as if hanging in the air. Suddenly the attack aircraft shook once again. A quick look at one plane, the second. No new holes. I turn around, one of the Fokkers falls. Maliuk? Is that you? I'm asking you on the USSR. I hit it. Now he's kaput. The gunner said cheerfully, Congratulations on the first one. Where's the second one? He's attacking. No, I won't let him aim. Shields off. I'm dropping the car on the left wing and throwing it down. The Focke-Wulf is close. Vigorously turn the attack aircraft, and this prevents Hitler's pilot to fire. He is in a hurry, gives a long line. But the fiery trace passes by. I turn to the right, and, clinging to the ground, at maximum speed I rush to the front lines. 2 or 3 more minutes and… Comrade Commander, we are under attack by 4 Fokkers, shouts Maliuk. The machine gun is stuck again. It's not getting easier by the hour. Feverishly looking for a new solution. Tensely looking into the distance, but neither our attack aircraft nor fighters are nowhere to be seen. What to do? I decide to gain altitude as long as the engine pulls. We can't slow down. Otherwise we'll be shot down. I pile the car on the left plane, go down with a slip. The speed is increasing rapidly. Again take the helm and gaining altitude, go away from the fire Fokke. The situation is even more complicated. Fire traces are passing from right to left. Height 100 meters. I'm doing everything to prevent the pursuers from aiming fire, but there are 4 of them. What to do? And suddenly, Commander, the Fokkers are ticking away. And that's right, they're leaving. Chickened out, they didn't risk to compete with our fighters. It turns out that a group of attack planes was operating over the front line. They were covered by our saviors. Noticing us, they came to our aid. Having finished processing the leading edge, the fighters turned to the east. I'm joining them. Teska, are you alive? I ask Maliuk. Alive, alive, Alander. And I'm singing at the top of my voice. Where infantry can't pass, and an armoured train won't pass, a grumpy tank won't crawl through, where a bird of steel will fly. I sing, because I want to sing we survived this flight by a miracle. Finally we arrived at our airfield. We got out of the cockpit. Not paying attention to the surrounding people, we with Maliuk throw ourselves into each other's arms. Only those who have been in a similar situation can understand us. Eyes smiling happily. They examine the airplane, feel the holes in the plane and tail feathers. I join them. So that's it. Now it is clear to me why the plane began to plan spontaneously on the left side of the stabilizer skin, literally ruptured. The shells passed between the left rudder and the tail part of the fuselage. The elevator rudder was pushed down and wedged in this position. Taking the machine out of dive, I with effort released it for normal operation. All returned? I asked Mechanic Motovilov. No, not all. He bitterly squeezed out. The crew from the 2nd Squadron did not return. I felt hurt and offended. It was a pity, a great pity for our battle friends. Let's avenge them and finish the job that they didn't finish. I called Motovilov. The airplane must be put into combat formation as soon as possible. And check the gunner's machine gun. We'll do it, Comrade Commander. The machine will be ready by morning. I'm going to report to the commander. Culleting catches up with me. My gunner saw how you were attacked by Focke-Wulfs. Glad for you, congratulations on your victory and safe return. He shook my hand. Thank you, my dear friend. We approached the command post dugout. Here already gathered pilots who participated in the airfield assault shared their impressions. The 1st Squadron was on the report, then invited to the commander of all pilots of the 2nd. Waiting for their turn. Captain Krivoshlek talks to each, clarifies some details. I stand aside, listen to this conversation and check myself, did I see everything my comrades are talking about? But now it was my turn. Squadron commander looked at me. Well, Tell us about your fight with the Focke-Wulfs. Start from the moment when you switched to flying. There was a pause. I was embarrassed that I suddenly found myself in the center of attention. My comrades were quiet, waiting for my story with interest. And I began to outline the details of this unusual in its kind flight, which became memorable for the rest of my life. Told how Maliuk acted, how he defeated the Fokke. After listening to my story, the commander suddenly hugged and kissed me. Well done. Though. It was the best reward a joke, a combat. Experienced air fighter, the commander praised me quite still green attack aircraft. So the task assigned to us was successfully completed. The enemy caused great damage at the airfield, damaged and destroyed up to 30 aircraft, set fire to gasoline tanks, exploded ammunition depot, destroyed several buildings. This combat sortie taught me a lot. I believed in their strength and made sure that the attack aircraft a really survivable machine. But most of all, I realized for myself a pilot needs high combat skill, combat experience, and once again experience. The enemy aircraft suffered significant losses, and Hitler's command was forced to put into action more and more new reserves. In our area began to appear dive bombers U-87, aptly nicknamed by frontline soldiers Lopotniki. The thing is that this airplane had non-retractable landing gear covered with fairings. The legs sticking out in flight gave a reason to witches to compare them with Lopotniki. We began to meet with Junkers 87 quite often. And not just to meet, but to conduct air battles. The first such battle, in which 3 Ju-87s were shot down, was conducted by a group headed by Senior Lieutenant Prudnikov. It was a brilliant victory. In the battle not only showed their skill our pilots, a serious test was passed by our beautiful equipment, the glorious Ilyushin II attack aircraft, a machine with high flying qualities, firepower and maneuverability. Prudnikov had many followers. One day our squadron was assigned the task 6-2 runs to bomb and attack the accumulation of enemy troops and military equipment in the vicinity of the Ternavskaya Gully. The route of the flight partially passed over the areas of Donbass, recently liberated from Hitler's invaders. A sharp pain squeezed my heart. I saw Donbass completely different. My flying biography began in the Donetsk sky. Here everything was close and familiar to me. And now blown bridges, destroyed mines and railroad stations, burned villages were passing under my wings. Accompanied by fighters, we crossed the front line. Below the usual picture in such cases, ground troops are fighting to the target a few minutes of flight. But the enemy anti-aircraft guns are furious. We are always accompanied by black caps of bursts. Skillfully maneuvering, the squadron commander confidently led the group to the target. Here is already visible, skillfully camouflaged firing position of long-range artillery of the Nazis, near hidden tanks, trucks. Cautions, attack, commands the leader and takes his car into a steep dive. I rush after him, freed from the bombs. Cautions, another approach. And again our bombs and rockets are raining down on the fascists. It's hell on the ground. We're turning around for the third run, and suddenly I hear. There's an enemy in the air. The leader takes the car out of the turn, and I follow him relentlessly. We're gaining altitude. I look carefully at the expanse. In the distance I notice a chain of small dark dots. It moves at an angle of 30 degrees to the line of our flight. With each second the dots increase and soon turn into silhouettes of airplanes following one after another. We can already distinguish them judging by the legs sticking out under the fuselage. They are known to us Lopotniki. But Junkers are not alone. They are covered by Messerschmitts. Will prepare to attack. I recognize the voice of our commander. We turn around and go into the frontal combat order Junkers. At this time, our fighters fought with the Messers. Now the word is ours. All 6 open fire. The formation of Junkers breaks. Scattered in different directions, Lopotniki dropped bombs on their own troops, relieved. One is already burning, falling. I clearly withstand the formation of the pair, carefully watching the air, repeat the actions of Krivoshlik. I am seized by the excitement of battle. We must hit the enemy while he is at a loss. I want to shout, but how can I teach him? Here he's making a 45-degree turn. So am I. Now his Ilyushin on a steep turn literally hangs over me. The slightest mistake and collision is inevitable. The tension lasts only a few seconds. And now the turn is done. I sigh with relief I survived. Now we're approaching. Closely watching the leader, as soon as he opens fire, I must also press the throttles. The distance is shrinking. The Nazi bomber is very close. Apparently the commander decided to hit for sure. At the same moment, at the right wing of his Ilyushin danced two streams of fire. It is the leader hit the Junkers from 4-point guns and machine guns. I, naturally, having caught Junkers in the sight, did the same. The flagship Junkers turned over on its back and, engulfed in flames and smoke, began to plummet. The rest of the Lopatniki hurried to get away. Our group followed them. I chose a target, but the Junkers dodged and went inverted. I catch another one in the scope. I begin to approach, and this one slipped away. That's a shame, another failure. And I wanted to shoot down the Lopatnik and open my personal account. Forgetting about the danger, I put the attack aircraft into a dive, accelerate the speed, then take the handle, and from below I approach the enemy. I quickly converge with him, releasing the landing gear, reduce speed and keep the enemy on the nose pin of the sight. Seconds of extreme tension pass. Already clearly visible crosses on the wings of the Junkers. A little bit to turn my plane, taking into account the preposition, and forcefully press simultaneously on the button for launching rockets. And on the guns and machine guns. Stormtrooper literally spews out a powerful jet of fire. Junkers flashed and began to fall. So was opened the account of enemy planes shot down by me in the air. I retracted the landing gear, turned to the left, and only began to look for a new target, as the commander's voice was heard in the helmet. Gather. Gather. An order is an order. Our 6 is gathering. All safe and sound. Everyone takes his place in the combat order. Yaks are approaching, and in their escort the 6 are returning to their airfield. Victories were not easy for us. During the period of offensive operations of our troops, the regiment performed difficult and responsible tasks. The pilots flew several times to attack the enemy's leading edge, struck important targets behind enemy lines. Day and night battles rumbled heavy bloody. In one of the hot battles, my closest friend Igor Kalitin laid down his head. It was hard to realize that he would never return to the battle formation, that I would not see his smile, would not hear a good friendly joke. It was as if I was orphaned. I didn't want to believe what had happened. I didn't want to accept the heavy loss. It happened like this. ... The ether, as always, is full of voices. Hundreds of tank and airplane radio stations are exchanging. Someone gives orders to someone asks for help, demands fire. In the Russian speech is intertwined German. One incessantly repeats call signs. Another shouts openly. Beat him, Lenya. Hit him, try to distinguish the commander's voice in all this noise and whistling. But I still catch the words of the commander. Keep in tight formation, there are Fokkers in the air. Reorganize. We continue our flight to the target. From 800 meters height, boxes fascist tanks are clearly visible on the battlefield. That's what we're going to attack. When reorganizing, suddenly for some reason our group fell apart. I was behind Kalitin. I'm on the radio with Igor. See the tanks? Let's hit them. Yes, he sees the target. His plane is already diving. I'm going a little to the right behind him. And then the unexpected happened. From under the engine of Igor's attack aircraft burst into flames. It was as if the machine began to unwind a ribbon of black smoke. Really. Even though Igor himself knows what to do, I shout. Maneuver. Knock down the flames. Do you hear me? But Kalitin is silent. Only rustling and whistling on our frequency. And the attack aircraft is rushing towards the ground. Fiery trails are passing nearby, its enemy fighters hitting me. But I don't pay attention. What to do? I'd like to use my wings to hold back his fall. Igor. My dear friend. 300 meters to the ground, 200, 100. Kalitin's car is burning like a torch. I'm pulling my plane out of the dive, but I can't take my eyes off the flaming attack aircraft. He crashes into the steel boxes of enemy tanks. On the ground rolls a ball of fire. Goodbye, my friend. I will avenge you on the enemy. My chest is filled with rage. I'm shaving and pressing the throttles. For my friend, for the dead guardsmen, for the agony of our people, for the tears of widows and mothers. I stopped the attacks only after the ammunition was used up. Then I began to gain altitude. And at that moment I felt a blow. The tail section seemed to be thrown up, and the machine immediately stopped obeying the rudders. Maliuk. What happened there? I asked the air gunner. In the lower part of the fuselage Reservavsia shell, he answers. A piece of the tail was blown off. That's the situation. Will we be able to reach our own this time? The airplane jumps up and down, up and down. In order to hold it back, I start to act with altitude trimmers and throttle sector. The Sturmovik is less nosebleed, but I'm experiencing extreme tension from such piloting. We go like this for about 20 minutes. And here is our home. With difficulty I landed the shot-down airplane on the edge of the airfield. My arms and legs felt numb. I got out of the cockpit, dropped the heavy parachute, straightened my stiff back. Runs mechanic Grigory Motovilov. Behind him Seamenet Sasha Cherkova. On their faces anxiety, surprise. Ivan Kondratyevich Klubov, the regiment's engineer, is rushing to me. What a magician. He smiles. How did you manage it, Ned Balo? What managed? I am perplexed. Look at your car from behind. I looked and marvelled at myself. The keel is shredded, the rudder in dark green shreds, the left part of the stabilizer on 2/3 as if cut off, the tail part of the fuselage torn together with the spars. A miracle. Just a miracle. Continues Captain Klubov. I have seen a lot of things in my service, but to arrive with such a tail, I have never heard of such a thing. And what's there? Motovilov reached for the oil-water radiator and pulled out a bloody rag. It turned out to be a piece of some Hitlerite's uniform. Klubov looked intently into my eyes. Were you flying low? Yes. Comrade Captain. We'll repair the plane. Motovilov entered the conversation. Do not worry and do not worry, tomorrow it will be ready. I knew Motovilov does not throw words to the wind. He can work without sleep and rest until he restores the machine and puts it into operation. At this time, a Willys is approaching us at full speed and brakes sharply. The regiment commander jumps out of it. And where is Kalatin? In a voice of anxious excitement. I silently lower my head. What about Kalatinch? He died, Comrade Major. I answer and feel a nervous lump squeezing my throat. Under what circumstances? And I told how it all happened, how the airplane Kalatinch hit an anti-aircraft shell as Igor directed the burning attack aircraft on the enemy tanks. Major Lykovsky listened attentively to me. The story of the feat of Kalatin very excited him. The commander took out of his pocket handkerchief, took off his cap, and as always at a time of great tension, began to wipe sweaty bald spot. Such a fine pilot, such a fighter. Why were you delayed, Comrade Ned Balo? Everyone returned long ago. I could not gather my thoughts to answer the commander briefly. In front of my eyes was Igor's flaming attack plane, rushing to the ground. I was avenging the enemy for my friend, Comrade Guards Major. I finally squeezed out. For several days I could not find a place. Grief crushed me. I felt as if I was guilty of the death of my battle friend. I couldn't get it into my head that Igor was no longer alive. But next to mine was his now empty bed. One day, returning from a combat sortie, I went to the hut, arranged for pilots not far from the parking lot here. Under the reed roof, you could take shelter from the heat, rest. Katyusha met me. We said hello, stood there, remembered Igor. He was our column comrade, and we felt the pain of loss equally. We walked side by side, we kept silent. But it makes our souls even heavier. We have to say something, ask something. Isn't it difficult for you to work at the command post? Not at all. She smiled softly. How I wished that Katya smiled more often, that her radiant eyes shone, that she always walked beside me like that. At 19 years old, you really want to love and be loved, especially when your youth has a dangerous enemy war. And I again remembered Igor, young, cheerful, brave Igor Kalatin, our regimental Gastello. He was only 21 years old,